Without a doubt, the two words that I use most often when talking about the Liberal Party of Canada is ridiculous and embarrassing. It's not because I have some sort of a limited vocabulary or whatever. It's because those two words just happen to describe the current state of the party over the past several years the best. It's insane to watch the Liberal Party communications team seem to not have a single person around who can actually tell them what Canadians care about. They take massive swings and misses trying to appeal to Canadians on different policies they put forward, and it gets even more ridiculous and embarrassing whenever they try and push attacks on the Conservative Party of Canada. Their most recent one, which I think is fully backfired, you can even see from the engagement on their social media post, was to go after Conservative MP Leslyn Lewis for her petition proposing to remove Canada from the United Nations. The United Nations, a organization that Canadians, even if they don't hate it, don't really care about. But the Liberals, because they deeply care about it in the political bubble that they live in, think that by going after Lewis on this issue, they're somehow going to have a rallying cry in favor of the Liberal Party and bring Canadians into the fold because I guess Canadians deeply care about all the money that Canada wastes over at the UN. Anyways, this is what they posted yesterday. I talked a little bit about Lewis's petition yesterday. I just didn't show posts like this, and it's great that I saved it because I really wanted to just talk about just communications strategy in general in regards to this. So their post says first, Pierre Poilievre and his MPs turned their back on Ukraine. No, they didn't. They turned their backs on Ukraine in the time of need, and now they're saying we should leave the United Nations. While they're importing far-right American politics into Canada, we'll keep working with our global partners to deliver for Canadians. Still, the Liberals cannot actually think of a reason why we must be very supportive of the United Nations. There's nothing specific that the UN does bad to Canada. We get really bad ideas from the UN, but they don't actually specifically impose anything on Canadians. It's just a worthless institution. But the Liberals think that Canadians are going to be horrified that Leslyn Lewis has pointed out that we pay $76 million a year to the UN for what? What are we getting out of the World Health Organization who helps the Chinese government cover up pandemics? It's ridiculous. Again, I keep overusing that word. I'll try doing it a little bit less throughout this video. But then we, of course, have the most embarrassing Liberal MP coming out, Mark Garrettson, to highlight this thing that Leslyn Lewis did as, I guess, a big reason why there are supposedly so many people leaving the Conservative Party these days. The Conservative Party, which in the most recent poll is 14 points above the Liberal Party, never talk about the popularity of your opposition's leader or their party in general. If you're in the polls at least more than 5 below the opposition party, do not talk about their popularity. You look like a clown. And speaking of clowns, here's what Mark Garrettson posted. He said, to all people abandoning the Conservative Party, you're not leaving them. They left you. Pierre Poilievre is to the Conservative Party of Canada what Donald Trump is to the Republican Party. And just the idea that, they're not, you're not leaving them. They left you. Really? What was there a bunch of United Nations fans? Was there a bunch of big fans of I don't know, bloated government spending that were leaving the Conservative Party? There's no real faux pas that Poilievre or any Conservative MP has violated that would make Conservatives uniquely want to leave the party right now. The Conservative Party has actually had a very good retention rate with its 2021 support. Most parties usually keep around 70% of the support, and 30% of the votes they get in the next election are unique to what they had previously. Right now, the Conservatives are holding on to 85, 90% of their support from the last election. That's actually fantastic. And so, the Conservatives are going to have a massive blue wave in the next federal election. There's ridings that the Conservatives haven't won in 5, 6, 7 elections that are actually in play right now, simply because the Liberals are doing stuff like this and trying to claim that you should come back and vote for them over something to do with the UN. And you should just ignore all the stuff like the high taxes, high inflation, incompetent foreign policy, crazy woke policy from the Liberals. Ignore all that. Just focus on that there's a useless international institution that a Conservative MP does not like and proposes that maybe it's a complete waste of time for us to engage in. Again, like I've posted on social media a lot over the past 24 hours, I haven't had a single Liberal actually explain to me what the UN does and why we should care about it. A couple of people said, well, it's good for international relations. So if we pull out of the UN, do we not actually do any relations with any other country? The UN is a waste of time. We already have a separate a department or a government that does diplomacy outside of the UN. It's not like that would go away if we are not part of this bloated institution where dictatorships and irrelevant countries get to sit on and vote on resolutions. Anyways, but I digress. Now, here's another thing that the Liberal Party did that was very embarrassing this week. They've announced their candidate for the Durham riding to go up against Jamil Javani. This is the riding that Aaron O'Toole used to be the MP of, and I'm happy that he's gone. Jamil is actually a great replacement for the Conservatives in that riding, and the Liberals picked a fairly odd candidate. I'll get to that in just 1 second. I just want to do a quick shameless plug that I, Wyatt Claypool, I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. Just in the theme of talking about elections, I just wanted to mention this. I had a video where it had like 20,000 views, and I was able to look up city analytics, and there's like 1,300 of you who live in the city of Calgary. There's a good chance that even if it's evenly divided around the city of Calgary, there's 11 ridings, and I assume that several hundred people watching this video could be living that riding. So if you do buy a Conservative Party membership, vote for me number 1 on your ballot so we can have a real conservative representing the riding. Anyways, back to the news. So the Liberals announced who they were going to be running, and it was this guy named Robert Rock. You shouldn't really have to know who he is for the most part. A lot of nominees for any party are kind of, nobody that anyone who's not super local should know. This was extremely funny to many conservative commentators and just reporters in general online because Robert Rock ran for the Durham Conservative nomination. Not, back in 2011 or 2008. No. He ran against Jamil Javani for the nomination. He literally has quotes all over his social media and in interviews talking about how we need to take on the Liberals and dismantle their destructive, toxic government. And then he runs for the Liberals. And I think this really demonstrates the sort of people that tend to seek nominations for parties. They could care less what party they're running for. They just want to run for a party that's going to enable them to maybe get a cushy and easy job to do. I'm not even kidding. That's kind of the problem I have in my nomination. There's like 12 candidates, and a lot of them you could tell if the Liberals had a better chance of winning Calgary Signal Hill, they would have run for Calgary Signal Hill. They're only jumping into this Conservative nomination because it's the bluest suburban riding in the country. Regardless, this is the best piece of propaganda that the Conservatives could have ever been given. That not only does this man have just a plethora of anti-liberal quotes, but it demonstrates just how empty the Liberal Party is, that they're just throwing anybody up in order to try and stop Conservatives from winning. I know Durham should be a shoo-in for the Conservatives. It's a little bit competitive depending on who's running there, but if the fact that the Liberals couldn't even do the slightest ounce of a background check on their guy really demonstrates that they know they're losing the 2025 election, so who even cares to check who's running for us? They're just trying to simply, they're really just sort of plugging away on social media, like slinging mud at the Conservatives, knowing they're not going to win, but maybe that in the eyes of their elitist friends in Toronto and Montreal, they look very woke and culturally sensitive and, very with it because they defend the UN and they attack Polyev for not being okay with gender theory, and they attack other conservative MPs because they happen to be, shock gas, pro-life. This is really what the Liberal Party stands for, just going after fringe social issues to please those who fund them, knowing that they're not going to win the next federal election. They sometimes push on the idea that housing is a really big area of accomplishment for the Liberals. It's not. Everyone knows it. There's a reason why now this year they're going to come out with a new housing strategy. They should scrap Sean Fraser, the housing minister. He's incompetent. He's basically Trudeau with less charisma. But they don't actually care about the policy. It's just about attitude projection, that we're the more kind and easygoing and sensitive party, other than that, not unlike those hard and disgusting conservatives. Because none of their policies that they've come out with actually are going to materially improve anyone's lives. It's the old policies plus an extra $100 million. So all they've really been resorting to is attacking the Conservatives in ways that just expose how empty the Liberal Party has become. The fact that they've been opposing the Conservative Party on cuts is insane. Usually in an election when the economy isn't in a massive recession, talking about cuts is maybe a good strategy, try and win some votes over some nervous voters who think that the cuts are going to go towards, actual necessary, public services, when that's never the case. But right now, when everyone knows how bad the economy is and how bloated the government budget is, nobody's that scared of cuts. But that's all the Liberal Party has left. It's getting mad at the Conservatives for proposing cuts to bloated areas of government and trying to defend the UN, because I guess the UN is a very, very major part of the Liberal Party's philosophy. Can they explain what the UN does? No, but that's just but if you don't understand it, you're a dumb conservative, like I've heard on Twitter so many times from people who are supposedly much smarter than me, that they can't actually even one sentence explain why we should care about what the UN even does. Anyways, that should be it for me today. I do have my Give, Send, Go fundraiser in the description of this video below. Uh, Basically, I'm still being sued by a billionaire. I'm winning that lawsuit. It's a really stupid defamation lawsuit where they have no evidence that we said anything that was defamatory. All of our stuff was factually based. We even were referencing a previous report from 2 years ago on the guy who's suing us, and that's why he sued. It's very silly. But he's drained me of $25,000. So if you want to throw some money into the fundraiser, it helps me pay for my legal costs. And then also, obviously, like I said before, I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. So if you live in Calgary Signal Hill, make sure you buy a Conservative Party membership and vote for me #1 on your ballot. There's a lot of people running for this thing. A lot of people are really just running like they're applying for a job at a bank, and they're just showing you how long their resume is. While at the same time, they actually can't name any conservative principles that they actually deeply hold. Other than that, I guess I'll see you guys all in my next video or another live stream if I happen to do one today or tomorrow.